An elderly woman from St. Peter is dead and 2 others forced to seek medical attention after an accident on Highway 2A this morning. The police are investigating the 2-car smash-up and are also looking for 2 men who were in one of the vehicles and fled the scene on foot. Shane Seeley has the story.
The deceased is a Karen Stewart, 65 years, of Black Bear, St. Peter.
Police Public Relations Officer Inspector David Welch giving me details about the victim of the fatal crash. He says she was an employee of the drainage unit and was working in the area where the accident occurred. That's at Blowers Road at about 20 minutes to 9 this morning. 2 passengers in one of the cars were injured and rushed to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital for treatment. Now police are actively looking for 2 men who were in the other vehicle. Inspector Welch says they fled the scene.
They are described as 2 males, one with a dreadlock hairstyle and one with a lower hairstyle. They were fled into a bushy area to the west, went into the west in the area of Port Vale and heading towards Highway 1.
The police PRO now wants the public to help them find these men.
But in the witness reports, these persons seem to be injured in the head. Blood was seen coming from their heads, so obviously people would notice these persons.
Inspector Welch is urging anyone with information to contact the police at emergency number 211 or call the nearest police station. Shane Seeley, CBC News.
Shane, thank you. 5 of the 6 families of the women who died in the Campus Trends fire are filing wrongful death suits. They were being brought against Ronaldo Aline, one of the men accused of robbing the store and causing the fire, the owner of the store, the owner of the building which housed the store, the chief labor officer, the chief fire officer, the fire service, the Minister of Labor, and the Attorney General. Attorney at Law David Comishong and founder of the September 3rd Foundation is representing 3 of the families, while other lawyers are representing the other 2 families. The family of Guyanese-born Pearl Cornelius has not filed a suit. Dale Ford has more.
Mr. Comishong is representing the families of Nikita Belgrave, Kelisha Oliver, and Tiffany Harding. He said the suits were filed on August 30th and on September 3rd. However, no total sum has been determined. Along with financial loss, the families are claiming for loss of care, guidance, and companionship. Mr. Comishong said the owner of the building was negligent by renting it with no fire escape, while the proprietor breached the Shops Act by not ensuring there was a fire escape, firefighting equipment, a route or a plan to evacuate staff in case of fire.
Whilst we accept that the perpetrators of the crime must take primary responsibility, it is our feeling that these other parties contributed. But the attitude of the lawyers for Mr. Pardasani and Ms. Ali was that there was no liability attaching to their clients. So where does that leave us? If they stick to that position, we would probably have to go right through a trial. But you know, sometimes lawyers give you one response to a letter, but when they actually receive the writ, they reconsider their initial position.
Mr. Comishong said the chief labor officer failed to enforce the act, while the Minister of Labor neglected to put regulations in place to ensure enforcement. He continued that based on information he gleaned, the fire service did not do enough to save the women, failing to break through the structure that kept them trapped. He said before filing the suit, he wrote to Attorney General and Minister of Home Affairs Adriel Brathwaite, indicating the state has to accept some liability in the matter. But up to this time, he has not heard from Mr. Brathwaite, though he has received acknowledgement of the suit from the Solicitor General's office.
We would have thought that the Campus Trends tragedy would have been such a wake-up call that urgent measures would have been put in place to rectify these deficiencies. If such measures were taken, then the families of the deceased would have some comfort that something positive, something constructive would have emerged out of their tragic deaths.
Mr. Commijon said he's not ruling out the possibility of out-of-court settlements. Dale Ford for CBC News.
Management of Liat is at this hour meeting with officials of the Leeward Islands Airline Pilots Association, LIALPA, to discuss issues surrounding yesterday's strike action, which crippled Liat's service across the region. News is that the acting chief executive officer of the carrier left Barbados on an evening flight bound for Antigua. The meeting follows news that Liat's pilots are back on the job and Liat's passengers are being assured that normal service will resume into tomorrow. Giving CBC an update on developments, the chairman of Liat, Dr. Jean Holder, says the meeting in Antigua is also being held to discuss other outstanding issues. In clearing the air about yesterday's work stoppage, though, Dr. Holder said he heard reports indicating that pilots stayed off the job. According to him, it was because of news that the LIALPA's chairman, Captain Carl Burke, had been suspended along with another colleague. The Liat chairman says that was not the case.
Myself and the CEO had, I think, some very positive discussions with the pilots and did assure them that the company's view was that certainly neither of the persons mentioned to me were suspended as far as the company was concerned, and therefore that could not be a reason for withholding service. The Liat management was never told by LIALPA what was the reason for the stoppage, and when strong rumors circulated that it was because of the suspension of persons, I think Liat clarified that there were no suspensions.
Dr. Holder is asking Liat's passengers to be patient with the airline as it tries to resolve the issue. He's also urging them to call to check their flight schedule.
I understand their pain, I understand their anger. I have often been a passenger myself, not only on Liat but on several airlines, and when these things happen, it's a great inconvenience to the traveling public. So I share their pain. I would advise them, however, today to really check their flights so that they can be sure that their particular flight is operating.
The National Union of Public Workers is not settling for anything less than the relocation of staff from the current Fairchild Street office. Staff turned up for work today but continued protest action, with some of them assembling at the back of the building. Senior Industrial Relations Officer with the NUPW, Wayne Waldron, says so far 4 offices, the National Employment Bureau, the Welfare Department, the Data Processing Department and the Statistical Department have been relocated elsewhere, and it is time to move the Land Tax Department. He also complained that the offices are untidy with an unpleasant odor, and water is leaking from the roof, which is leading to the growth of mold and spores. Mr. Waldron says some staff have developed fungal infections on their skin, while others have been diagnosed with respiratory ailments. He says the building is not conducive to work, and industrial cleaning and cosmetic repairs are not the solution. He wants the staff moved as soon as possible to more amenable surroundings.
What I understand is there was a favorable proposal to relocate staff to the Warrens complex, but that the furniture is still being awaited to outfit that office, so we need to have the furniture in place. So pending that, that is another challenge. But we want to insist that workers, it would be unreasonable and a breach of the Safety and Work Act to ask workers to go into that building. Even members of the public who conduct business are appalled with the conditions and the unpleasant orders. So it's not even suitable for general public to go and conduct their business.
Barbados is being told to never take teachers for granted. Principal of St. Joseph Primary School, Clodagh Allen, says these professionals have played and continue to play an important part in shaping the lives of many young Barbadians. She was at the time speaking at a service to mark the 28th anniversary of the rural primary school. Principal Allen called on parents to work with teachers to help the youth and praised teachers at St. Joseph Primary, past and present, along with the community for developing several successful Barbadians.
We want to thank them, all of them, for their contribution to the shaping and the molding of our pupils. That is not something that can be taken for granted, especially when you consider what is happening around us these days. Our teachers cannot be taken for granted. Parents depend on us when they are not around. Parents depend on us to make sure that they are safe and that they are trained into model citizens.
Bishop Marcus Hines, while delivering the feature address, says teachers are building a nation with morals and character and reminded parents of their responsibility.
But the parents also have a duty to perform or to do in this impartation. Sometimes we leave it all to the teachers, and sometimes we look that the teachers should do more than what they're doing. But whenever a problem occurs, we always point to the home. So therefore, parents has a tremendous responsibility in building morals and character.
Leader of Government Business in the Senate, Senator Maxine McLean, believes the cultural industries legislation will provide a range of opportunities in manufacturing that can be tapped into by local entrepreneurs. Speaking in the Upper House this morning, she suggested that the laws will help Barbadians to commercialize their creative expressions.
Design. So when we talk about design, design can be design of furniture. As I said, it can be design of garments, it can be design of residences, it can be the design of packaging, which is an essential or critical part of most products, that unless you're selling commodity items. And so I believe, Madam President, that we have before us a piece of legislation which seeks to create for the first time dedicated legislation for a key sector in Barbados.
Senator McLean says other windows of opportunity will be opened for doing business in markets like China.
Many Barbadians now speak Mandarin and are therefore in a position to offer a service. That's a creative service as well. A person who went to China and speaks Mandarin, but who before that went to KFL and did a first degree in management and has serious skills in marketing, can now design promotional material and translate it in Mandarin. Similarly, persons who would have studied languages and went abroad or did it here, whether it's French or Spanish, or went abroad and did Portuguese and are doing it here now, if it's possible, can use those language skills to offer services.
Well, while supporting the legislation in principle, Opposition Senator Wilfred Abrams has described some aspects as too minister-driven.
The minister has too much power under this bill. For example, in order to obtain the approval of a minister for a cultural project, the applicant must either be a cultural entrepreneur, a cultural practitioner, or a governmental entity, and must be registered with an approved cultural agency. Now, that is an exceedingly restrictive interpretation when we get to the other aspects which the bill seeks to cover. Yes, this may work for what we initially or commonly perceive as culture, like music, film, whatnot. But there are other aspects that this bill seeks to touch, and those are in relation to heritage.
Senator Abrams also warned about restrictions to access to the proposed Cultural Industries Fund. Minister of Labour, Senator Dr. Esther Buyer-Suckoo, says the bill is designed to stimulate economic activity. She says through it, a number of critical areas are being addressed, including funding.
It does create the Barbados Cultural Industries Development Fund, which is not going to be managed by the National Cultural Foundation. I heard that it sounded like there was a little bit of confusion on that issue. It's not the National Cultural Foundation. National Cultural Foundation may be an agency that may, because they need funding for some of their projects, they may approach the fund. But the fund is going to be separate and managed by a board of directors.
Well, Independent Senator Dr. Trevor Carmichael rose in support of the legislation, describing it as transformational. He sees potential in the development of the local film industry.
We have what I call a nascent film industry in Barbados. It is nothing like the industry in Trinidad or the one in Jamaica, which is huge. The one in Jamaica goes back to 1915 with great film exportation. So we're not making comparisons there. But we have a nascent film industry which is sound. And like so many things that we do in Barbados, it is very well done. And I say that, and I advert to a few cases. And I think the film Payday was mentioned.